Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast. I'm your host, Mike Morgan. Today I have a very special guest. Let me read you her bio and we will get going with Heather. Heather Perkins is a behavioral health provider who has dedicated her entire career to working with the military and first responders. Heather's specialties are trauma and narcotics, and she currently teaches officer wellness training throughout the state. Heather has worked with law enforcement officers specifically in the realm of responding to 911 calls alongside officers, crisis intervention, critical incident stress management, negotiations, as well as assisting with casework. Heather has experience in suicide intervention, criminal investigations division, community relations, and patrol. Heather has taught various subjects at the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. Heather has conducted immense research in the field regarding officer suicide, effects of the job, and resilience for law enforcement officers. Heather, I would like to welcome you to the podcast. It is an honor having you on. And, I love reading all your experience. It's obvious that you've dedicated your life to helping guys like myself. And we need it, is all I could say. So, I want to thank you right off the bat for doing so.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I am super excited to do this podcast. I think it's one of these topics that a lot of people don't want to talk about. It's so uncomfortable or it's very misunderstood. But I always go back to our first responders, specifically our law enforcement community. They just take care of everybody. And so who takes care of them, right? Because the truth is, I don't care who you are, where you come from. Every single person has a capacity. And once your capacity has been hit, what's your efficiency on the job?
Exactly. No, it's the truth. And, you say who takes care of us? A lot of times we don't even take care of ourselves. We put everyone in front of us, and we kind of minimize the damage that's done to our mental health and psyches as we go along with these professions. But if you reach out and ask for help, or you show emotion, or you become vulnerable, then it's weakness, and we can't be weak. That's what we're always taught, and especially when we get into these hyper-masculinized professions. And as a result, guys suffer. You see it over and over. Women too, but not as much. Women are much more in touch with their feelings and more apt, I think, to ask for help. I want to generalize, but that's been my experience. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you tell me if that's a general, consensus.
No, I think that's really accurate. Women are very emotional beings. Women are feelings-based. Men are very objective. They're very physical in nature. They're very linear in thinkers, and women are very circular in their thought processes. So how they handle critical incidences, cumulative stress, crisis type situations, and cumulative trauma, vastly is different. But then you also have to think about the vulnerability piece. It's typically saw as vulnerability is a weakness, but it's not. It's really hard to peel back your layers and be like, here I am. Here's all of me. That's hard because, in our mindset is if I'm vulnerable, I'm weak. And in the law enforcement world, vulnerability means I'm not safe. And that's something we teach all the time. It infinitely is officer safety. And then secondary to that is I've had such the privilege to work with some incredible female police officers and some in leadership positions that have really done incredible things in their field. And I have been told that it's like, hey, I'm working in a male environment, predominantly men, and even myself, right? I'm a woman, I'm a co-responder, and so I'm working in that realm too.
Yeah,
we have to work a little bit harder, and so there is this part where females are less likely to come forward because they already feel like they're fighting an uphill battle. And I'm not saying that's true for every single one of them, but I've had conversations with, very seasoned female officers who say, like, I cannot be weak. I can't be seen as weak. I'm already operating in a predominantly male field. I've got to have it together. I've got to be able to run with them and XYZ. And most of them do. They are forced to be reckoned with. So I think it's pretty incredible to see the dynamic of both, and then watching them work together. It's extremely rewarding.
Yeah, it is. And, throughout my 30-year career, I've worked with various females, some of which have been vastly better at doing their job than male counterparts that I've worked with. So you can never make the generalization that just because someone's a female that they're going to be less than. Um, I specifically remember a girl named Lisa Bloom who I would put next to me if the shit hits the fan, and I would have no problem doing so. She got in a roll around, excuse me, one day, and before the troops got there, he had put it on her pretty good, but she was still going. She came to work the next day or two with black eyes. And I went up to her. I'm like, you have no idea how much respect you earned from everyone in this precinct doing that. I'm like, most guys wouldn't do that. You're walking in here looking like that. And first of all, I know you gave that guy everything you had. And it just, the amount of respect that I have for this girl, it was just incredible. So just the sheer fact that someone's a female means nothing as far as their capabilities. I've met some hardcore women that I would go to war with, no problem, no questions
Yeah,
asked. And consequently, I've also met some,
absolutely.
conversely, I should say, men that I wouldn't want to go to a war with, to be honest with you.
I'll tell you, I have one that really comes to my mind right out the gate. It was, I was a baby. I was absolutely a baby in the field at the time. And we had a call that was like a potential trafficking situation. Also with a minor involved, some maybe sexual abuse that was happening. And it's one of my very first calls I responded to. And I was with a female officer. And we rolled up to a hotel that they were essentially like renting. She kicked that door down and went to business. She just was not wasting any time. And that, one of my first calls, I was like, okay, all
Yeah,
right,
girl.
all right, yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I'll do whatever you
it's
tell.
like, that's hilarious. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Outstanding
Never.
officer.
Yeah,
She was.
yeah. There are some fantastic girls out there. So let me ask you, what got you into this field to begin with?
It's so funny. I get that question all the time. I have family that are law enforcement. When I first moved to North Carolina, I started working with the military, specifically the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And it when I was doing my internship, I had experience with the Florida Department of Corrections and working with some pretty high-profile gang members with substance use disorder. So I'd already got my feet wet into the legal system a little bit. I'd had a bachelor's degree in criminal justice because I had had interest in the field. I just didn't know where I wanted to go with it.
Okay.
And so when I was working with the Marine Corps here, there was an opportunity that presented itself to work in the substance abuse field to build a program at an agency. Um, and so I took a leap, and they took they took a chance on me, and it was a really good thing. We built this program, but it turned into a whole lot more. Like, I learned their capabilities with what I can do, and they learned my capabilities. We built a really incredible partnership. It was the very first agency I worked for. Met some absolutely incredible people. I learned so many things, and I cut my teeth there. They taught me a lot. Really just took me in. Had great leadership. Um, and then it just kept building. Like, I kept getting more trained. I kept meeting more people. I kept getting tasked with more situations. And my police chief was like, hey, give the community what they need. And so then I started coming forward and was like, hey, sir, what about this? What do you think about this? How about we do this? And it was pretty much like, take care of people. And then I learned these officers, and then I learned, like, how best to work with them, and that I had to learn to trust them, and they had to learn to trust me, that I wasn't going to, hit somebody's red button one day and then they were going to be.
Yeah, not an easy
And then
task.
the opportunities just kept coming. And essentially it was an absolute blessing. I don't regret a single day of it, and I would do it all over again.
That's fantastic. So now, do you work for the state itself? Who
I
are you employed
do.
by? Okay.
I do. I work for the North Carolina Justice Training Academy, and that
Okay.
is essentially it's like college for police. We set the training standards. We have all kinds of specialized training, and I'm super excited that the Justice Academy has really honed in on officer wellness. We have a lady named Jessica who created the Weather the Storm program, and it she developed it, and now it's my baby to rock. But she did a really, really exponential job. And the Justice Academy tries very hard to meet all the officers' needs. They bring the best of the best in to train these guys. So it's a very rewarding job for sure.
Excuse me. Still trying to get rid of this cold. Can you speak about the Weather Storm program? What is that all about?
Yeah, of course. So Weather the Storm program, we talk about officer wellness, all the things that are encompassed in officer wellness. I talk about officer suicide. I talk about the effects of the stress. I talk about critical incidents for officers. So if you think about it, your average person experiences about 3 critical incidences in a lifetime. Your first responders 600 to 800 critical experiences in their career, just in their career. So
It's
that gives
phenomenal.
you an idea of how consistent that you are experiencing traumatic events, what that anatomically does to your brain. So I teach them the neuropsych side of this is what's happening. Like your amygdala is much larger than somebody else's. Your anatomy of your brain is different. If I looked at your MRI versus someone else, you would see that.
So you're
Your
actually seeing
neurochemicals.
physical, structural changes in the brain. That's incredible.
Absolutely. Trauma changes the shape of the brain in general, but specifically for your law enforcement, your first responders, that amygdala, which is your fight or flight brain, it's your primal brain. It's the one that says, hey, I'm in danger. Let me speed your heart rate up, tunnel vision, your gastrointestinal stuff starts to slow down. It's all those things that you need to fight, flight, or fawn. But because it's accessed so consistently,
Right.
the amygdala swells and swells. It gets bigger, so it's enlarged. And obviously, we know because it's changing the shape of the brain, and now that part is getting larger, it will affect other parts of the brain, your neurotransmitters, the synapses, all those tiny, fine little things are affected. Some people are incredibly symptomatic. Some people are not. They've compartmentalized so well, but it's still there. I talk to them about the stressors of the job. What do those things look like? How do you deal with it? I teach them about accessing resources, like how do you know where to get help. I talk to them about the really difficult things that people don't that are uncomfortable as far as like relationship issues, because 50% of law enforcement reports that relationship issues are a thing. I talked
Oh
to them
yeah.
about sleep disturbances. 71% of law enforcement um, that obviously come forward and say these things report that sleep disturbances is a huge thing for them because of shift work, long hours that are extended. We talk about leadership. That's a big one. That's a really big conversation
Yeah.
about supportive leadership versus unsupportive leadership. Understaffing is a huge stressor for our law
Yep.
enforcement officers because they are trying to do their job plus the job of other people, which is very indicative of the long hours and the extended hours. I talked to them about anger. That's a big one. 50% of law enforcement report an increase in anger just because of the job that they do. Obviously, I talk about trauma, vicarious trauma, officer involved shootings, all those types of things. Like, what do you do? How do you get through it? What does your life look like after your career? I, if I work with officers and I know they're retiring, I make a beeline. I'm like, what are you going to do?
Hmm.
Idle hands are so dangerous because the brain, once you stop doing that, you have a withdrawal from adrenaline. The adrenaline surges that you were so used to, your dopamine it's all there. Um, and I
Yeah,
go
that's
right
so
to,
underserved. I'm sorry to interrupt it. It's such an
oh, you're good.
underserved function of like an office like yours is that people, because it happened to me, when they're retiring, I don't think they're really cautioned to what they're going to experience in a lot of cases, especially if you're not going to something right away. And in my case, I was medically retired. I blew out my back in September of 2020. So I had 2 years of surgery, and essentially I was home. I wasn't allowed to work. I wasn't allowed to volunteer. I wasn't allowed to go to the gym. You're basically a man without a purpose. Luckily, I built a gym in my basement, but so there was 2 years right there of having no purpose, and then I had to go through a workers' comp case after I was retired for another year. There's 3 years of no activity, and let's face it, these governments don't care. These departments don't care when you're out the door. But it takes such a toll in your mental health that like you said, you have idle hands now. You have all this time to think, and for years you've just been going, just been putting one foot in front of the other, and not really thinking about what you've been experiencing. And now, as time's going on, things are starting to come back to you. And not, number one, you're not a part of this thing you were for 30 years. You're no longer this thing. The camaraderie's gone. A lot of times we kind of identify with, as much as you try not to during your career, or I did anyway. I don't want that job to define me. It does in many respects. And you're no longer that thing. And you don't have an outlet for the adrenaline anymore. Like you train and you're fighting, you're doing this and that. And now I don't want to say no need for it, because you still want to train just for your mental health, physical well-being. But, essentially, for all intents and purposes, you're no longer that thing. And what do you do with this now? And in my case, it kind of came up, and as I was telling you, I was watching the Sean Ryan podcast, and as Eddie Penny Seal was recounting the story of losing his best friend and crying, I lost it. His company, Unafraid. And I realized that I had PTSD and I had to heal from it. And a lot of guys don't. I went for almost 2 years experiencing things, but could not figure out the origination of these feelings. I'm getting anger, I'm getting depression, just not feeling well, not feeling myself. Pretty happy-go-lucky guy, and I was not really that. And no one tells us what it's about. It's weird. It sounds so naive in some respects to say, but we don't talk about it until you're in it. And at that point, you're like, who do I speak to? And then you feel like you're alone. Who are you going to talk to about this stuff? You don't even know what to say. It's such a weird bunch of emotions and dynamics going on inside of you.
It is. And I try really hard to always be up to speed on the resources. Because even though I teach these classes, I tell the officers, I'm like, I'm accessible. I would rather you call me and let me connect you to the powers that be that are as close to you as possible to help you. Or I'm going to sit on the other end of this phone and I'm going to listen. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Absolutely
Yeah,
okay with that. But when I'm trying to look for these resources, there's not a whole lot. I mean, there are, but the time that it takes to truly access how to get them, besides obviously like your typical, like your Blue Help, your 988, it's hard.
yeah,
And a lot of times employers, they'll push their EAP, and that's fine. But police officers have this thing where they don't like to trust people.
oh yeah. Well,
And
self-preservation, number one.
they're very territorial about where they work and taking that armor off. And so EAP, while yes, I'm not saying anything against it, and it's a good resource to use, and I encourage people to utilize it, but they don't want to do it that close to work. So I
Yeah,
always talk to them about telehealth. Like that's a big thing now, since the COVID era that we had. You can pick up the phone and talk to a therapist. And so I tell them, because they don't want to drive to a therapist or in the town that they're policing for somebody to be like, oh, such and such is over here. They must be getting counseling, right? This
yeah,
crazy.
no,
So I tell them,
absolutely.
I'm like, here's some platforms. They really take just about any type of, medical insurance. Call them. You can do a therapy session in your car. You can do it sitting in your bed, sitting at your dinner table, and they like that option.
Yeah,
But yeah, when you're really searching for resources, can you imagine being in a crisis if you didn't know someone like right out the gate, how challenging that would be? Because I mean, like you can go online and look, but you're going to have to scroll through pages. You're going to have to click some things. And I'm sorry, but when people are in crisis, there's a thing called tunnel vision. You don't have the capacity to utilize a website at its entirety. I mean, I know
yeah,
I wouldn't. And so that's a problem, right? That's definitely a problem, and that's something that I want to work on, at least for my state, and hopefully more than that. Um, just that utilization of resources and being able to access it has been challenging, and the lack of, truthfully.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. And, I think a big part of the problem, especially with an employee assistance program, is guys said there's a stigma attached that if you ask for help, your gun and badge are going to be taken away and you're going to be thrown on a desk. So, how many guys are going to opt for help and girls are going to opt for help knowing that, that's your potential outcome? It's just like my buddy is a former F-18 pilot. We talk about going to the surgeon where he had some mental health things going on. He's like, go to the flight surgeon because then they pull you. You have unhealthy pilots in the air piloting these, multi-million-dollar aircraft, and it translates to the civilian world as well. He's like, would you rather have a healthy pilot instead of this guy who's afraid to go ask for help because he's carrying around all this stuff inside? But unfortunately, these systems are set up the way they are, and I don't know what the simple answer is because I don't think there is one. Because you're getting certain people that once they do go for help, they really don't need to be carrying a gun at that point. But you can't just kind of group everyone into that one basket because then guys who, you know, aren't on the verge of doing anything serious but need a little bit of help are going to hesitate getting it because they see that this is treatment the other guy or girl's getting and they don't want the same for them. So, what is the answer in that respect? It's not an easy question to be asked.
It's not, and I don't think it's a one size fits all either. I think,
Yeah.
everything's very gray in our world anyway. Um, and one of the things that I talk to my officers about is like, hey, I would rather help you and get things in line before it ever gets to a point of where your gun and badge gets taken. Like, that's the last thing I want to do as a provider. Um, I don't want them to have a loss of identity. I don't want them to lose their career. Like, it takes a very special person to enter that force and to selflessly give and sacrifice all those things, mentally, well-being, the time with your family, all those things. The last thing I want to do is be the culprit to say, well, I'm going to take you out of it. No, let me help you before then. Let's put some things in order. Let's have some conversations before it gets to that. That's something I readily talk about. Um, but I've had officers go through EAP and had great success. And I don't say, I go to say that to say, um, I do support all resources. I have officers who have private therapy. They go out to the telehealth or they go to an office and they do really well. Some agencies, and one of mine was very fortunate that we had a police psychologist right there in the building, as well as myself, and we had another master's level provider who could treat law enforcement right there inside the agency. So if they had any needs, they could come to one of us. And so some agencies do have that, and that's a great option. If you have that rapport with them, incredible. And peer support, that's another thing. I really, really support peer support.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of brass in that. There's not supposed to be. And that's shown to be like heavily successful in agencies is utilization of peer support. And the way that's supposed to be is, okay, you've got each other, but your people that on your peer support team know, like, hey, if this is out of my lane, I know where I can take you. But I'm gonna be the taxi driver. Basically, I'm gonna take you by the hand, and we're gonna go to the higher level of care. But there's at least that buffer system. You at least have someone you could instantaneously go to. It's not,
Okay.
flipping through some resources. It's like I can pick up a phone. I know who's on our peer support team where I have a relationship with them. And that peer support team, they have training. They're trained to know, like, hey, what's your lane and what's not. And if it's not your lane, what do I do? And so it's one of those things that I highly, highly support. And I've seen it work, leaps and bounds with agencies. So I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think
Yeah.
whatever helps, I support it. If that makes you a better officer, that keeps you healthy, that keeps you well, that keeps you on your job, um, and you're good to go, I'm for it, whatever that looks
Yeah.
like.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that. I just want to touch base real quick with structural changes in the brain. How, what's a threshold as far as seeing in terms of what can change someone's brain? Are you talking about like one critical incident could potentially change the structure of someone's brain, or is this more of years long traumatic events that they're seeing that'll do it?
So typically you'll see that as cumulative stress. So how this works, okay? So let's say we go to our very first 911 call and it is an infant fatality. Well, we know that's considered a traumatic event. We have, unfortunately, this dead baby. So after that happens, after the adrenaline goes up, we handle the call, we do whatever we need to do. You enter this acute stress stage. That could be, 1 month, 2 month top deal. You'll have some stressors. Maybe you'll have some difficulty sleeping. You'll be maybe some irritability, quiet, withdrawn. It's different for everybody. Everybody responds differently to stress.
Okay.
Some people don't have any symptoms at all, but they're still in that acute stress period at that moment. And that's where it gets you. Sometimes you think like, oh, I don't feel anything, so I must be okay.
Yeah.
Well, after that period of time has happened, whether you're symptomatic and you're not symptomatic, if you don't do anything, any level of intervention after that critical stress situation that's happened, now you're wading in the water. This likely is going to turn into post-traumatic stress. So that acute stress, that's where we want to have intervention right out the gate. And if you don't do it, now we move into the post-traumatic stress. And as we know, that post-traumatic stress becomes more symptomatic. You become more likely for high-risk behavior. Obviously your emotionality is going to change. You might be more angry, withdrawn. Your communication may be very rigid. Again, it looks different for everybody. And untreated, and anything that's not done with that it's gonna end in the pathophysiology of post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's one of those things that's like, you're going to carry this for the rest of your life. Yes, you can have management of it, but it's going to be like your suitcase that sits by your bed at night. You're going to pick it up every day and you're going to carry it. Some days it's going to be really heavy. Some days you can carry it easily. Sometimes you may need help. So that early intervention is so important. And so one isolated incident, yes, has effects on the body, sometimes everlasting effects. Again, it depends on the person's age, their neurocognitive development. It depends on their history. So, for example, first responders typically have a high adverse childhood experience score. They've already experienced some trauma in childhood. And that's just one of those statistics that's very interesting to me.
Me too.
So does it trigger the childhood trauma? Because then it's like ripping a Band-Aid, right? So that will obviously impact how they respond. What are their coping skills like? What is their emotional intelligence level? All those things play into how much that one critical incident affects them.
Okay.
But systematically, an accumulation of that's where you really start to see like the shape of the brain begin to change. Not saying it can't happen after one incident, because we know one extremely traumatic incident, you lose your buddy on the job and he's right beside of you. You can't tell me that that's not going to be sitting in the back of your mind or the front of your mind for the rest of your entire life, right?
Absolutely.
And so it also depends, when you've had that cumulative stress, what are you doing about it? Because your brain is like a filing cabinet. Everything that happens, we just keep adding more and adding more. And
Yep.
it gets to a point of where when that filing cabinet is full, and I tell my guys this and my girls, I'm like, hey, you might be in the grocery store, you might be reading a book to your child, you might be watching TV, you might be standing in the shower, or you might be on a call. You may, that's very likely when it comes out, it's going to be real ugly. It can manifest as a panic attack, anxiety attack, or it could slowly manifest through substance use. We know that alcohol use disorder, unfortunately, is a commonality among our first responders as far as, ineffective coping skills. And so it really just depends on the person, but that cumulative stress typically is where the shape of the brain changes. But that's not to say that one situation can't change your brain chemistry forever, because it
Okay.
can. Absolutely can.
And now you mentioned, excuse me, early stress interventions. What does that include?
So early intervention. So typically we have this thing called critical incident stress management. That's like, let's say we have an officer involved shooting. The agency in itself would hold a debriefing or we call it a CISM. Your telecommunicators are involved, your law enforcement, your agency, other law enforcement, if they were involved in that, will go there. Peer support usually will hold that. And if you are lucky and you have fortunate, you have social workers or your master's or doctoral level providers in your agency, they don't typically run that. They're just there as the resources, but they're watching. And that peer support will roll through that debriefing and talk to people. They will, kind of analyze what's going on. They'll talk about how it's kind of like a group therapy, but not. That's the best way I can put it. Some agencies force them. It's a mandated thing. And then some give it as an option. And then some, it just determines, it just depends on the type of call. So that's an option. Utilization of peer support on alone time is an option. Counseling is an option. It's anything that, even increased self-care. If you know that you've experienced a very traumatic thing or a very high stress situation, that is the most important time and window of time for you to pour into yourself and do all the things that you're eating, you're sleeping, you're meeting those basic needs. I'm not asking you to, mix rocket fuel or come up with quadratic equations, but I do need you to sleep. I need you to try to eat. I need you to take a shower, go outside, spend time with your family, put yourself with people that are your support system that are good for you. It's those very, very bare minimum basic necessities that sometimes get
Okay.
us over the hump. And so it can be from something as small as trying to sleep at night versus, your CISM or therapeutic approach or whatever that looks like. And some of our officers, it's such a severe, tragic thing. They have to have higher levels of care for their mental health, and that's okay. And I've seen that happen, and they've come back right back on duty. They're fit for duty. They just needed extra support and a higher level of care in that moment, and they've done very well, and they're still doing really well.
Not good. Now, one thing that's very common, I've done it myself. Can you talk about how destructive this can be when we self-isolate and kind of go into this, world with just ourselves? I guess there's many reasons for it. One is you don't think someone's going to understand. One, you don't want to burden someone else. That's a big thing with us, is we think we're burdening people when we go to ask for help, so we don't do it. Consequently, we just sit there and have this stuff fester in our minds for days, weeks, months, years, sometimes. And can you just talk about the destructive effects of doing that self isolation?
That I think it's really important that we first understand where the self-isolation comes from. It's that you guys are the help. Everyone calls you for help, and a lot of times we forget to ask the help, "Are you okay?" A lot of people don't get that. Um, and so it's uncommon to reach out for help because it's like, I am the help. Like, if I
Yeah,
don't do it, who's going to do it? How's it going to get done? And unfortunately, a lot of agencies are understaffed, like, we talked about. So it's like, well, I've got to be on my game. I got to show up for my duty, and I got to work my shift, and I got to fill in extra, and I got to make sure my partner's okay, XYZ. So there's this unlikeliness to seek help. Um, and when that happens, and stressors of the job and all of that, depending on what's going on at home too, because it's going to bleed over. 83% of law enforcement says their mental health directly impacts their ability to do their job.
absolutely.
So when those things happen, it's very easy to internalize what's going on. So there are a couple case studies that talked about like survivor's guilt. Like, officers have gone in, and this is like an example that really comes to my mind. So when we talk about like tactical training, there's an active shooter, and the first thing that you're taught is to neutralize the threat, right? You get to stop the threat, the immediate threat. Let's say you walk in that building and there's a child that's injured, and you have to step over that child, not knowing if that child's going to be alive by the time you get back. But I have to go neutralize the threat. I have to stop the immediate danger, because in hindsight and then in retrospect, that's going to save more people's lives. but there's still that baby at the doorway.
Yep.
So when they have situations like that and where they have to make critical decisions very quickly, it's easy to turn around and after the fact and internalize it and be like, did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? What did I miss? Could I have done this better? Should I have done this better? So now they've internalized all these things and they're holding it, right? So now we've got, I'm very unlikely to ask for help because of vulnerability. I got to work. My buddy needs me. I've got to provide for my family. Plus, I got to do all these other duties because we know law enforcement's underpaid and I got to keep it together.
Yeah.
But now we've got to add internalizing my decisions on the job. It's like a perfect recipe for a disaster.
Yeah.
And it's hard to come out of that. It's like literally trying to keep your head above water. And when you're trying to keep your head above water and you are constantly in fight or flight and survival mode, it's easy to do the self-destructive behaviors like, alcohol addictions because they give you dopamine, which is like, it feels real good. So if it fuels the addiction, your subconscious is seeking to feel better, right? Like I have all this stress, I've internalized, I have all the things going on with work. I'm dealing with my own stuff, my own mental health. Maybe I got some depression or some anxiety or PTSD that's unresolved. I just want to feel better.
Yeah.
So when that self-destruction starts to happen, because they're like, I don't really know what to do, don't really know who to go for to help. There's a risk for me going to try to get some help. Let me just try my way first because I'm a fixer. And when I respond to calls or whatever it looks like, whatever my capacity as a law enforcement officer, I'm expected to be the chaplain, the police, the judge, the magistrate, the
Yeah.
doctor, the nurse, the counselor, the best friend, the mom, the dad, all of it. So let me just try my way first.
Yeah, it's
And
the
we just
truth.
try
No,
it. And then we try it. It feels real good at first, but it's so ineffective and it becomes toxic and it becomes destructive. And I could really go super, super deep into this of where, first responders typically have a high adverse childhood experience where they have experienced a lot of trauma as a child. A lot of times they join the field to say, hey, I'm going to be a complete 180 of something different, or I'm going to stop people who did what they did to me.
yeah.
So there's like a war raging inside of people sometimes, and it's hard to come out of that. And it's easier of like in that childhood trauma, I learned I had to self-soothe myself anyway because I didn't really have anybody there for me. I had to figure out how to navigate that trauma, and it worked for me. So now here I'm 35 years old. This is what I know works. And as a child, your brain is underdeveloped. You're neurochemically underdeveloped. You don't have the social skills. I mean, your brain develops till you're, about 28 years old.
Right.
Of course, you're going to pick up some ineffective things. Like you think about a toddler, you piss them off and they'll bite you, right? They
Yeah.
become so violent.
Just like some perps.
Right. Try that this day and time as an adult. See how that goes
Yeah,
for you.
exactly.
So my point is that those ineffective coping skills are like, oh, this worked for me. And it sticks. And so they roll into adulthood and it's like, let me just keep doing the self-destructive stuff because that's all I know. So that factors into it too. If we really go super, super deep into psychology. And here's a big one. They don't want to let people down. They don't want to let their family
Yeah.
down. They don't want to drop the ball. Because if you think about the personality types of first responders, specifically law enforcement, you don't just wake up and say, I'm going to be in law enforcement because I'm going to make millions. That's crazy to me. It
Yeah,
doesn't work that
that's
way.
definitely crazy if you think that.
Exactly. I've never met one that has said that. And the ones that I've been so blessed to have experiences with and conversations and spend that time with them, they have a really good reason to be where they are. Very, very respectable, genuine sincerity about their career. And I really value that about this population, which is why I absolutely love what I do. It's extremely rewarding for me. But they don't want to let people down. They
Hmm.
want to do all the things and be successful. They want to take care of their family. They want to make the world better. They want to, take bad people off the street, bring the law to the people. Um, and I think that speaks highly of their character, and I think that speaks volumes of the field.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, most people take this job for a noble cause or noble reasons. They want to, you're not going to change the world, but they want to do whatever they can to make that little change in the world. Um, I think that's across the board what most people go for. Some people just want a job, to secure a job, but I think for the most part, especially the effective cops are ones who take it for those reasons. They want to affect some type of change. And like you said, a lot of us have had tough childhoods. And I think, maybe they want to stop bullying, so to speak, because a lot of them have had that type of upbringing, maybe from their parents. I've seen, it's funny because I told you the other day, I didn't realize it until I've started my healing journey over the past 12 months that so many guys that I work with have had tough relationships with their fathers growing up. And, you're echoing the sentiments now saying, um, that most of these first responders have had traumatic childhoods. And, I think I told you the other day, I don't know if it's because of or in spite of our fathers that we go into these professions, but someone had to light a fire under us because it's not normal what we like to do. Like everyone else is running away, we're running towards. And frankly, most of us love it, wouldn't have it any other way. Something to be said for the adrenaline rushes because a lot of us love action, but I think it goes far deeper than that, to be honest with you.
It
And
does.
yeah,
Absolutely. And I can
because
speak a little bit to that. So,
please.
there's a study that was done. It talks about the roles of a father. Obviously, I'm a woman. I'm a mom. I don't have that credibility. But
Yeah.
this study talked about the roles of the father. That there are certain things that a father has to do for his children. Mom can try all day long, but it has to come from dad. And so there's identification, adoration, and affirmation. Those are the three things that it has to come from dad. And so with this job, something you talked about earlier is like it does give you a sense of self identity. So if you don't have a present father or a consistent, healthy relationship or somewhat decent relationship with your father, how do you really know who you are? How do you really
Good
know who
point.
you are as a person? And so this job, it's very clear who you are. You have authority. You have a role. You're extremely important. And guess what? That ties into adoration and affirmation. I love you. I care about you. You're mine. You belong to me. You're important. You're valuable. You're enough. You are so adequate, so capable. All those things are gone.
Yeah,
But in this field, you can get it. You can get it. So it does bleed over. Yeah, it's very powerful when you think about it.
it is very interesting. I never
And
heard
it's
it explained that way, but it makes sense.
yeah, and I when I think about when people come into law enforcement, it is like there's something they want out of it. And that's fine. That's great. Like they're doing their very best. They're doing the job that the rest of the world doesn't want to do or is too afraid to do it, right? It's
Yeah,
scary. And I think about one of my last classes that I had, and this right here just solidified my entire career for me. And I know that's crazy to say. Something seemed so simple, made me so emotional as an instructor. And I don't know how we got talking about it, but in the back of the classroom, there were two officers. They were partners and they worked for the same agency very closely and have for several years. And we were I can't remember specifically off the top of my head the topic, but it was something about teamwork and how law enforcement it's a team sport, right? You need your people, you need your backup. And I don't know what it was, this inclination that just came out. I looked at the one on the left and I said, would you give your life for him? Without missing a beat. He did not a split second pass. He said, absolutely. And I don't know, like that came over me. I got so emotional because it was like, you can't go to any other job and somebody
Mhm.
say that. Let's go to the
Yeah.
grocery store and
Yeah.
see if the clerk says that to housekeeping or to the clerk beside of her. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with any of those professions or anything
No,
like
not
that.
at all.
I'm just saying that gives you such optics into what this world looks like. And this man has a family. He's got children. Um, and without missing a beat, he said, absolutely. He did not even have to think about it. And I look over at his partner. His face was worth $1 million. You could see that it was just like, wow. It was such a huge moment. And my classroom was silent. Like everybody was just like, wow. It was so much validation happening because you could see it on their face. Of like, yes, I don't even know him, but I would do it because that's my brother in blue.
Yeah. No,
And
it's the truth.
I got so emotional, and I had told him, I was like, I have never had any of my classes get to me like that. And I said, you just reinforced why I've spent countless hours and as much work and research as I've done in the field and time in the field, and working hand in hand and being attached at the hip. It's like, you just reinforced everything for me. And that was so valuable to me. And that was such a God moment for me. Like, wow, God, this is a blessing. And this is a validation of like, I'm exactly where I need to be and for the right reasons. So I'm super thankful for those two guys. I mean, the whole class was incredible. But that moment was powerful. Just like,
No, it is. And I remember when after I retired, I was going through my stuff. And I remember thinking one day, like, I'm never, you know, I would have killed or died for the guys and girls I work with, and most of them would have done the same for me, if not all. And you're never going to have that again. Like, I'm never going to enter any other profession or field where the guy next to me, for the most part, will die for me. And um, I don't know. I never feared it. If that was my destiny, I remember I got out of the shower one day. I was in Atlanta, and it was a super violent place, and I was just thinking about death. And I'm like, I remember looking in the mirror. I'm like, God, if it's my destiny to die in the line of duty, and I'm not glorifying death, I didn't want to die. And thankfully, I didn't know it destroyed my family and stuff. But I'm like, just please let me kill the guy that kills me. Like I didn't fear it. I didn't want it to happen, but if that was my destiny, that was my destiny. I was at peace with it. I go out like a warrior, but you realize you're never going to have that again. Like I realized once I journeyed with ayahuasca, that was kind of my healing journey, and
mm-hmm.
during the course of that, um, the universe kind of told me like your time is done, like you did what you did, and you're no longer that, and the stuff that came along with it no longer serves you, so it's going to be gone. But I instantaneously became at peace with it, and it's tough for a lot of guys to do that because one of the reasons that we're talking about now, like you're never going to get that type of brotherhood in anything you do the rest of your life. It's tough to give up in some respects. I always loved being on a team. I love sports growing up, and this kind of just translated into that as well. You're just on a different sort of team, and you're never going to have those teammates and that brotherhood again. So it's something that you need to give credence to because it's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so thankful for those guys. And I truly feel that about all of the classes and all the agencies that I work with, just getting that time with them, just getting to know them, watching them operate. And I've been so fortunate because it's like, yes, I will check on duty with you. We're going to be in the car together. We're going to respond to these calls. We're going to handle business. And then after that, I'm going to take care of you. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to make sure you're good to go, that you have all the things that you need to be, efficient. Because when you're not efficient, you are in danger. You're a
Yeah.
liability. And the last thing I want is for anything to happen to you or anybody else in your agency. So it's been so rewarding to me. 1,000 times over, I would have never imagined I am where I am. But I'm so fortunate. It's so rewarding working with these girls and guys.
Oh,
Hey,
absolutely. They're
and
definitely lucky to have you.
I appreciate that. And, I tell them I truly care what happens to them. I care about their families. We always want to keep families intact too, because, the family definitely definitely pays a price too.
Yeah.
They have to
Yeah.
share their person with their community, or or the rest of the country if they're federal officers. Um, Knowing like you might not walk back through that door again. That's hard. That's a hard reality. Um,
It is.
and it's like they have to learn to acculturate and adjust our law enforcement officers. Like when they come home, it's like they got to have time. You can't tell them to take out the trash 5 seconds after walking in the
Yeah.
door. It's like we got to give them some space. We got to give this time to like, let me just breathe. Let me just get myself back together. Let me just ground myself with whatever that looks like. Because you think about it, when we talk about PTSD and trauma and all those sorts of things, there was this really stupid stigma of like, oh, only military can have PTSD. I know you know what I'm talking about.
I
Well,
myself didn't realize. I thought it was from seeing your brother or sister next to you get killed. I didn't realize mine came from being inside the most devastating and intimate moments of other people's lives over and over and over and over. You deliver a death notification. The relative either just committed suicide or they were killed, or even natural DOAs. You know that their lives are never going to, their life is before you showed up, and now their life is after you showed up, and there's a distinct
mhm.
line that divides it. And that's what caused mine. It was kind of like inheriting their grief and never processing it out, just burying it, burying it, burying it, and finally it came out, and that's what it was. So I think it's a lot of misconception from us, including us, about what can cause PTSD.
It is, and it's 100% a lack of it's ignorance, and I don't say that in like a
Yeah,
hurtful or harmful
no, not
way.
at
It's
all.
it's really just not knowing. There is not a lot of education out there, and that's literally like what my goal is now. Is like let me just go forward and try to conquer and teach these guys. But why it's so easy to compartmentalize? So like we think about the military, there's isolated trauma, like they can be deployed, we can take them back out of it. And I'm not saying that I'm not dismissing or minimizing, because that I ultimately love and respect our veterans and our active duty. I'm so grateful and so appreciative for any and everything that they do. Law enforcement is okay. Today we're going to check on duty. We're going to work 14, 16 hours. We went to a house fire. We did CPR on a kid. We got into a car chase. We got a fentanyl exposure. We had a DOA. We had a missing person, and we worked a crash. That's all in one day. Tomorrow we're going to do it again. And the day
Yeah,
after that, we're going to do it again. And we're going to do that for 20, 30 years. So it's like you kind of become robotic of like, okay, this is like the normal of the job. I'm going to go home, and if I tell my neighbor, how my day was at work while I'm eating dinner, like, yeah, I worked a homicide case. Neighbor's going to be like, you're just sitting there eating a cheeseburger like it's nothing.
yeah, yeah. I think we're nuts. Absolutely.
It becomes
Excuse
very
me.
robotic. And so when
Yep.
it's time for us to respond, like empathetically, which is hard, that's a challenge because we're so desensitized, because we see bad after bad after bad. We see people
Yeah.
on the worst day of their life, and we see the the worst people in the world. Like we see the fruits that they bear, and these horrible things that they do. Um, but you do it so many times for so long, it's easy just to stack it and compress
Yeah.
it. It's like, because I'm gonna do it tomorrow and next week, and this is like I'm acculturating to my new norm. Even though the neighbor at the dinner table, he's like
Yeah.
mortified.
It is a norm. We don't literally don't know any better. It's the truth. And yet you'll tell one of these stories, so matter of fact, and literally, like you said, they're looking at you sideways, and you're just throwing your food up like it's nothing. And you're thinking, like, is there something wrong with me? I've looked in the mirror before because at various times in my life, I'm like, I haven't felt things that I thought should have touched me. And I'm like, man, am I broken? Like, it just becomes that robotic that
Yeah,
nothing
and it's
affects you.
frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating. Like I've had officers talk about like they have like a death in their family, and everyone's like falling apart, and they're just very stoic. And it's like I and they don't know how to elicit it. They don't know how to pull it out and be like, here it is, so I can respond like everybody else. And people take that as disinterest or cold or callous or I don't care. It's just like my trauma dial's wide open. It's been open for 10 years, and I've seen worst case scenario all the time. I'm so desensitized to it that my brain doesn't give the same signals and responses as someone who's not in it. And so those misconceptions happen, which can cause, conflict and people to say certain things, but it's like you
Yeah.
truly can't help it. And
Yeah.
and
My
there's
one of
times
my
where
best
like
friends committed
I
suicide in '05, and I couldn't cry. I'm like, dude, what is wrong? I was trying to make myself cry. I'm like, what
you
is
you
wrong with you?
try
Like
and you
literally, I'm
can't.
looking in the mirror. I'm like, what's wrong with you? I couldn't do it. And I was so sad that I could not cry.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself of where I know what the normal social cue is and the normal social response. And I want to give that response super hard, but I can't do it. And I don't know how to do it because I don't feel it. It's just like I have no words. That's how I experience it myself is like I got nothing. Like and you obviously say the things that, like I'm sorry for your loss, like XYZ, all the appropriate things. It's not that you don't mean it because you do. It's just like I don't know how to give you anything else more past
Yeah.
that.
It's like what a psychopath feels like. They have to fake emotion. They look and see how everyone else reacts and think that's how I should be reacting. And it's the same thing. Like you just, I mean, it's not faking it. And maybe it is in some respects, but you're just like, why am I not eliciting a response? Like I should be feeling this and I'm not.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ingenuineness about faking it. I think it's that you just try really hard and you don't know what to do because you're like, well, I don't feel the way that they do, but doesn't mean I didn't love or care about this person that I've lost. I just, I just can't get there. And then and then they deal with it differently too. And it's for people who just don't get it. They just don't understand it. They view that completely different. Um, but it's hard because a lot of times you want to give it. You're like, this is the right time and I need to do it to show that I care, but I can't and I don't know
Yeah,
how to get there. It's really, really frustrating, incredibly frustrating.
it is.
But
Absolutely.
that
Um,
desensitization is it's big and it's everlasting
yeah,
for sure.
no, it absolutely is. It's funny. I had just tell you not strange story, but about a month ago, a buddy of mine that used to work with in Atlanta, so that was, over 20 years ago, hit me up. He had watched a podcast episode, my first one, and he's like, I realized that I needed to speak to someone. He's like, but I felt so weird calling you, so I didn't. And then he watched another episode, and he's like, bro, halfway through, I started crying. I had to stop, and I called you, and we're talking. And he's like, I don't know who to talk to. He's like, I can't talk to my wife, and even if I talk to another cop and they understand, no one's in touch with their fucking feelings, bro. So what are they going to tell me? He's like, I've watched you over the past year on your Instagram and stuff. And he's like, you get vulnerable and you talk. So he's like, I realized I had to talk to you because who else is going to talk about their feelings? Excuse me. And it was so powerful to me. And I'm like, brother, a year ago we wouldn't have had this conversation because I wasn't capable. I'm like, ayahuasca, kind of let me feel things in my life and change my entire perspective on my entire life. So now I can. But if we were talking 365 days ago, you'd be getting the same response from most other cops you're getting from me. Now it's totally different. But um, we're not in touch with our feelings, and a lot of guys or people want to be. They're just not even sure how to go about it. Like how do you get to this point where you're able to talk like me? I mean, mine was plant-based medicine healing, and that's what kind of took down all the walls for me. But guys and girls are wondering, like, what do I do? Like, how do I get to where I want to be?
And this sounds really crazy, but people are afraid to get better. It's the
Yeah.
unknown.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know
is.
what that looks like, and I don't want to go there because I don't know how to have control. And we know that control is a big thing in law enforcement because you got to have control or everybody is in danger. And so if I go there and I try and I start to feel uncomfortable or I don't know where it's going, I feel vulnerable and I feel out of control. I don't know what the new is going to be because I've been doing this for so long and I know it and I'm comfortable. People don't want to be uncomfortable and
Yeah,
it makes them very apprehensive. But we know it's beneficial and you're going to get whatever you put into it out of it. Um, People are afraid of new normals.
yeah. Especially cops. Cops hate change. Holy
I
shit.
wasn't going to say it, but you said
It's
it for me.
unbelievable. You inject like the smallest software update in the MDTs, and these guys are tripping out. Like dude, calm down. You're gonna learn this in about 15 seconds. This is bullshit. Why do you got to do this? You always got to mess with stuff that's working. We're the worst in so many respects, especially
You ain't
changing your
wrong.
life.
I
Yeah,
watched them
yeah.
do it.
You know the deal. You've worked with them for long enough. It's
You, you,
crazy seeing it
you
sometimes.
change
Like,
one evidence form, it's over.
oh my God. Literally, they call it high school with guns, and sometimes it's like middle school with guns. The
It's so funny.
Yeah, the temperament on some of these, mostly guys, girls are much different, but it's pretty funny. So let me ask you, like, you're talking to someone, 20, say you have a family member now, young, going into law enforcement. What do you tell them as far as what they need to do to keep themselves healthy from a mental health standpoint? Physical health is, intertwined with that, and I've always spoken about how important that is. But from a mental health perspective, what do you tell them from day one as far as what they should be doing?
And truthfully, this is what I tell my BLET students when I have the opportunity to teach. I love it. I try to give them a heads up of like, hey, it's not if, it's going to be a win. And the more you educate yourself on things that work for you as far as wellness, whatever your wellness looks like, is it the spirituality piece? Like, do you have a specific religious preference? Like, whatever, like, stay intact with that for sure. Because, by mind, body, and spirit, I'm very holistic when I talk about how I practice behavioral health. Um, I talk to them about their take what you need and leave what you don't, pretty much. Take what you need and leave what you don't. Because they will take everything and they think they got to carry everything. It's like there's certain things that are not yours to carry, especially
Yeah,
on certain calls with multiple people. And if one person messes up, yes, everybody's going to pay dearly. And that is accurate. But there are also times where there's multiple people involved and you can't carry their stuff and
yeah,
yours. The pack gets way too heavy. You'll sink the boat. If you think about it, and I give them this analogy too. If you have a boat, there's a hole in the boat. How's the boat going to sink? Water has to get in. You got to let the water in for the boat to go down. So there's certain things in your career you cannot take personal. That's a big one right there. Like,
hmm
especially your new officers, like everything's feels very personal.
yeah, it does.
And especially you're dealing with non-compliant people and they're saying, horrific things to you. You have to just understand that there's a nature of the beast in law enforcement. So I talk about that. I talk to them about, ways to access resources, which ones are applicable, and how do you know, like, what are the signs that your body's giving you? Like, I'm real big on the physical health part too. Great book, The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I always recommend it. Trauma sits in the body, critical stress sits in the body, all of it. And bilateral body movements makes you use both sides of your brain, which increases processing, which is why rapid eye movement and effective sleep and all those things are really important that you tap into, because your brain needs it to process what happened that day and the days prior. So I talked to them about more of the proactive approach versus being reactive. Like, yeah, we're going to talk about reactive and here's what you do when it happens, but prior to, make sure your cup is always full. The basic needs, a lot of them are so wound up in caffeine and nicotine.
Yeah,
and so I talked to them about that. I'm like, hey, like, gotta have a conversation, right? About your vices. But I really speak to them on a proactive piece of the job, the stress, like, here's your heads up, here's what you need to do. Keep that cup full in whatever aspect that looks like, because this job is a taker and it's going to keep taking.
yeah,
And if you don't have anything to give, you're in a dangerous place. So keeping that bucket full is huge. Or, can't pour from an empty cup, keeping your cup full.
true, true. It's very, I like when you say that this job is a taker because this job will take everything if you let it. You cannot
Yeah.
let it. I remember even small things when I was a young officer in Atlanta. I'm like, I'm not letting this destruction take me down. And I just told myself I'm going to appreciate even the slightest things in life, beautiful sunset, sunrise, birds, beach, whatever it may be. Appreciate every beautiful thing you see in life. It's, the little things that that make you happy, to be honest with you. It doesn't have to necessarily be these big, huge, life-changing things. Just the subtle stuff day to day. Just appreciate it. Like life is beautiful. There's gonna be shitty parts and there's gonna be some visceral pain.
Mhm.
The thing is you have to feel that pain. You have to feel it. You have to process it. You have to heal from it. Because once you do, you're going to be a healthy individual, more resilient. You're going to be capable of having healthy relationships. How many times have you seen guy and girl friends of yours in relationships and you're like, what are you doing with him or her? It's so far beneath you. You should not be near them. But for whatever
Yeah.
reason, whether it's low self-esteem or they didn't think things were better, whatever it may be, they'll latch on to that person because that's, what they thought of their self-worth. And
And they settle. They
they
settle, and
settle greatly.
it's sad.
Yeah, it really is sad to see. So if you're coming from a healthy place, healing yourself of, all these things that ill you, you're going to be able to approach that. You're going to feel good about yourself, and you're going to make sure that everyone else comes up and meets your standard instead of you going down to stoop down to meet theirs. And it's hugely important, I think.
It is, and it
So
really builds, confidence and leadership too when you're well, and um, there's an emulation there of like, because I think about my experience, like I had, I was really, really fortunate. I had a great captain. I had a really great deputy chief that both of them were just spot on. I could talk to either one of those guys, and I could easily have said, "Hey, this is getting too heavy for me. Like I need a break." And I have gone to both of them before and said, I need some time, and they've made it happen. But they had to go through the same thing. They had to realize like, oh, I don't have all the answers, and I got to do stuff to take care of myself too. So they understood that. So from a leadership perspective, recognizing like I got to be okay too, because there's that credibility there to have that understanding of my junior officers, um,
absolutely.
or other staff that our telecommunicators. A lot of people don't talk about them, but
Yeah,
you
they're
think
going through it too.
I had two people in my class. The biggest thing for them is vicarious trauma. They're sitting there on a phone. They don't have no control. They have control over what they say, but they have zero control, like tangible physical control, um, over the scenario. But they're going to sit there and they're going to listen to it, and they're going to do everything that they can to mitigate what they can. And it's like, can you just imagine sitting on the other side of the phone and hearing the most horrendous things? You can't do
Mm-mm.
anything about it besides hold the phone.
Yeah,
And I have worked with some incredible telecommunicators too. And it's just like, wow, that vicarious trauma that they carry is huge. A lot of people do forget about them. That's truthful. They do. And
no, it's
another thing
true.
that I've really learned that telecommunicators share with law enforcement is because it's such acute, there's such a acute experiences with people like through these calls for service. Nobody really knows what happens after the fact. There's no closure. Nobody ever gets closure, and that's a frustration that both ends share, um, because they do the immediate, like what needs to happen right now. Obviously, like our detectives that do casework and things like that, it's a little bit different. But our patrol officers and telecommunicators, they're like, I don't know whatever happened to that child. I
Yeah,
don't know what happened to this person, this elderly person. Did they get the help that they need? There's no food in this house. I have worked with officers that we have gone to calls where there's no food in the refrigerator. We've had domestics where they have put gas in people's cars so they can get to where they need to go. They've bought their
yep,
groceries. They bought baby diapers. They bought formula, in those acute situations. And if they're so selfless to do some things like that, they want to know, like, well, did they ever get help? Did they ever get to where they needed to be? Are they safe? Am I going to find, like, specifically your domestic violence cases, is the next time that I get a call are they going to be dead, or did I do enough? Right. So they are left with this lingering, what happens? There's no closure. And it's very frustrating because these guys and girls, they give their all in these moments, especially, our telecommunicators do too. And they don't ever know what happens.
yeah. No,
That's,
it's the truth.
yeah.
Yeah, we rarely hear, and it's funny because sometimes you'll get an update on whether it's detectives or whoever it may be, and it's a good outcome. and you're glad. Or other times it's a bad outcome. You're like, man, I wish you didn't tell me that. I would have just kind of rather left it where it was. But it is what it was. It is what it is. It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So, all
Yeah.
right. So let me ask you: have anything that we haven't touched on that you like to talk about?
Oh my goodness, we've covered so much.
I know.
I know. I don't know. I can't really think of anything. I mean, unless you have other questions for me, I think we hit some really, really good topics. And I was super happy to talk about our telecommunicators too, because, like I said, I think they get forgotten about.
Yeah,
And they do some really
dispatches.
incredible work, really incredible people. That's for sure. Um,
Absolutely. Let me ask you one thing. In regards to when you're speaking to married police officers, a
mhm.
big problem I find is that guys don't bring anything home at all, and they shut down all lines of communication. And I don't think that's good. It's a fine line between what you bring home and what you don't. But I don't think you should just be shutting your spouse out, saying that she won't understand. And you're coming home in these foul moods. Excuse me. No one knows why. Um, I think you owe it more to your spouse to just protect them, quote unquote, from everything, when in fact now you're endangering the relationship, so to speak, because you're shutting down so much. Like, what do you tell guys and girls about who are married about, having almost like a harmonious dynamic? Like, how do they healthily bring something home and kind of let them in to know what they're feeling, as opposed to, not letting them know everything because you don't want to bring some of this stuff home?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That's pretty consistent conversation that I have. Is that relationship dynamic? And
Yeah.
a lot of times they tell me right out the gate, it's I don't want to put that on my spouse, that vicarious trauma. And then second of all, I know if I say those things and paint this picture, they're going to worry even more than they already did to begin with. Like now they're even more negatively affected. Not only do I miss time with the family and I put strain on the family, my spouse has to pick up the slack, whether it's with the kids or the animals, whatever that looks like. Now I'm going to trauma dump on them too. There ain't no way. I'm here to protect people and I'm definitely going to protect my spouse. So there's no way I'm going to do that. And then you have the spouse over here is like, I clearly can see that something is not right.
Yeah.
There's something that's not going on, and you don't want to talk about it. And some spouses, they go in, they're like, ask, 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 and then it just fuels and perpetuates conflict, and then it blows up, and then nobody's talking.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just such a misunderstood thing. And sometimes people just don't even want they want to come home. They don't even want to talk about it. They just want to separate themselves. It's like I'm so over the situation. I'm so over the work day. I just need some sense of normalcy. And so a lot of times they tell me I go home, my spouse wants to talk my head off, and they're like, I don't want to talk. So
Yeah.
that's a big
Yeah.
part of it too, is they don't want to do math equations. They don't want to, make life changing decisions right out the gate when they're home. They just don't even want to talk about it. It's like, 'cause
Yep.
in that moment, they're trying to figure out how to self regulate and tuck it away themselves. Whatever that
Yeah.
looks like, processing, compartmentalizing, it's all self regulation. But I talk to them, it's like, it's a give and take. There's communication cues, there's ways to do better communication, um, knowing your partner's needs, like what do they need from you, like how do they meet those needs, how um like love languages, it just follow me, it goes with this. So like it's important to know your love languages, right? Like some people are like acts of service people, some people are quality time people, some people are physical touch. Sometimes the best way to fully communicate and get that is through those love languages. Like they may not verbally come out and tell you like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and I'm feeling depressed, anxious, XYZ, stressed and tired. It's like I just need you to meet my needs when I get home with what I respond to, which could be physical touch, acts of service, whatever. um, that typically goes over a lot better. And then when things calm down and self regulation happens, then the words start coming.
All right.
So it's kind of like they're not ever gonna come out and say, oh, I need you. A lot of times they're like, oh, I'm very independent and I don't need anybody. But when you learn their love languages and what they respond to, what their needs are, how to meet their needs when they do come home, it's like, give me what I need in this moment so I can self-regulate, adjust from work to home life, and let me get back to my grounding space. Then they're more apt to communicate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's more or less a decompression time, so to speak.
Yeah, of course.
Excuse me.
But supporting your partner during that decompression time is imminent. And if you add to it, they're definitely not going to talk to you.
Yeah,
They're going to be
exactly.
extremely frustrated, and it feels like they're beating their head on the wall. Like, I've already told you this. This is what I need from you. I don't need you to ask me and interrogate me about 50,000 things. Give me this space or whatever my needs are to help me get from one transition to the next, and then I can participate. But I got to do this first because I can't go from here to here.
Yeah.
And that going from here to here gets real stressful, it gets real exhausting, and it can be very hard. But if we create that environment, that space, that grace and understanding, compassion, empathy, understanding, patience, that's a big one, patience,
Yeah.
to get through that, you kind of learn like what's the buttons not to push and what do I need to do to be a supportive spouse, so that I can get that communication. We can have those conversations. Because you think about this, when you are still in fight or flight or, in adrenaline or whatever, your prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your brain, your decision making, the articulation, it all goes to sleep because your amygdala is on, and you're not going to want to have a conversation when this is asleep and this is firing, right?
Yep.
So decompression time is really, really important. And a lot of times I got officers who say, I just sit in my car in the driveway before I even go in
Really.
my house. And you know what? That's okay. If that works for you,
Yeah.
do it. But that decompression time is so crucial. And that's where we really do need supportive spouses and, partners or whatever. There's a book called I Love Cops. I Love a Cop. And it really gives the optics and helps set the perception of what their job is like and how that works for them. And it gives them like ways to like be understanding and how to be supportive and what to do, what not to do. You know, and sometimes not asking those very gruesome details like that could be extremely detrimental, obviously. And we know that happens, unfortunately. Kids ask those questions too.
Yeah.
But the book I Love a Cop is really good. I recommend it to a lot of people. I learned about this book when I was getting my emergency responder and public safety certified clinician course done. They recommended it, so I bought it and I read it. And it really gave me a good perception on it, a good eye of like what I can do and how I could be better as a support person. And understanding that need for decompression and digression, and how we can't expect them to do a gazillion things and fire on all cylinders after experiencing a long, exhausting shift, having to fight people, and this and that, but chase all the things that come
Yep.
with it. It's like, that's crazy to think that we could just expect them to snap right to it and just operate like the rest of us. It's crazy. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So we got to do our due diligence. We got to make sure we take care of them. Take special
Oh,
people to do it. That's for sure.
no, it does. It does. It's listen, it's not an easy job being married to a cop. There's a lot of baggage that gets brought with that job. So kudos to mostly women, and the husbands as well. So I think it's a valuable lesson. Kind of just give them time to get in there, decompress. Unpack some of the stuff they deal with because you're dealing with everyone else's problems all day long. All you just want some peace and quiet when you get home. Just kind of relax. Then you can kind of get back to being a husband. But the worst thing, and I know it's the same for me, you walk in and it's blah 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 blah. I need you this, I need you that.
Yeah.
Give me a few minutes just to chill, calm down, and then we'll go from there. But very important advice still. I think I like it.
Yeah. And
You know what you're doing.
a lot, thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of officers, they like mindless things like they get these like Tetris or these games on their phone, it's so mindless. And I'm like, it's so preschool. And I'm like, I don't care. If it works
Yeah.
for you, keep doing it. Like I have officers who um they color. Like I ain't saying nothing
Oh
about it,
yeah.
but it sounds so childlike. But it actually there's like neurochemical effects to coloring. So it helps focus. It helps decrease cortisol. Your stress hormone.
Yeah.
So I have officers that do that. Like it's just super mindless things that help during that time frame. So
Better than drinking
no,
could be a lot worse. We used to work. We flip
yeah,
flop tours. So on the weeks that we were working 3 to 11, excuse me, we'd have sometimes 15 of us play Call of Duty. We had our microphones on and stuff. So we just get in a room, 15, go hard for like a couple of hours every night, and it was cool, mindless fun. Everyone decompresses. Most people's families are sleeping anyway after the three buzz. And, it was just something to just calm down. And, it's, listen, there are much worse habits than coloring or playing video games. So,
absolutely. And I'll say this too on the other end. The spouses of law enforcement officers, they it's a lot. It's a lot on them. Like I said earlier, they have to accept like they may never come back in the store. I don't the stress of being worried about their person and then acculturating to their world and trying to be supportive. It's also really important for law enforcement officers to know like your spouse is paying for it too.
yeah.
And we got to be mindful of that, right? The worst thing you can do is beat up your teammate. And I don't mean that like actually beat up your teammate, but
Yeah. Yeah.
in hindsight, just speaking out loud of like you got to take care of your spouse too. Like you have a lot of demands, but be understanding that there's impacts of your career onto them. Like they're having to be really independent and doing a lot of things without you because you're working. They're spending holidays alone. They're raising the babies, alone because you're working a lot, and they're picking up the
Yep.
slack and trying to support your career. It's like go easy on them.
Yeah. No, it's the
So
truth. Give them grace because they're with you the whole time. So give them the same grace. Excuse me. All
yeah.
right. So listen, I had a fantastic time speaking to you. Let all your links will be in the bio, but let everyone know how they can get in touch with you if they would like to do so.
Yeah, so you can find my Instagram, HP113090. You can find me that way. And then you said you'll include contact links, I
Yep.
believe.
Yeah, all your
Yeah.
links will be in there. So if they want, everything will be included. So
Yeah,
hopefully we'll get some people reaching out to you because you are a huge resource.
thank you. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I would rather take a call at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday um, than the alternative. And it could be a total stranger. I don't even care. But I absolutely love what I do. And any opportunity that I get to talk about the great work that our law enforcement officers do or anything that I have to offer that, may even in the smallest positively impact their life or their career, I'm going to do it. So I'm happy to have that conversation with anybody or link anybody to resources, even if I'm like not where you are, I can help you locate what that is. And I'm more than happy to do so. Um, but yeah, I'm so
Perfect.
excited. Thank you. I'm so grateful for our time and definitely grateful for your questions for sure.
Absolutely. It's great having you on. I want to thank you once again. Thank you for what you do because it is hugely important. There are so many guys and girls out there who need what you're providing. And, hopefully you just keep releasing stigmas. And, as time goes on, more and more will be less, feeling less pressure to not get help. I hopefully it'll just avail themselves of the negativity. And if they need it, bam, go seek it. And they'll be back in the game before they know it. Because a lot of times it's not a major
Right.
tweaking, it's got to be done. Just this minor stuff and get you right back in the
hmm
game.
Yep. And I will tell you, I don't think I have worked with any officer that has got any level of help that was removed from their career. I'm trying to think. I think every single one of them went right back to duty, if I'm not mistaken. I can't think of any off the top of my head in, my several years of work that's happened. So,
Yeah, and I think it's rare. So, guys and girls, if you do need help, please don't make this generalization that if you go get help, your career is going to be taken, because I promise you, it is not. Only the most severe cases are going to probably be taken off the street. And even then, once they get the help they need, they're going to be restored back to full duty. So, again, I want to thank you for everything, and can't wait for the episode to come out.
Excited. No, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Heather, you take care.